Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Firefighters Podcast, where we seek to develop, inspire, and motivate the world of the emergency services operator through a series of wide-ranging conversations. Now, before we go any further, just hit that rate, follow, or subscribe button on whatever platform you're listening to. It's a key performance indicator for us and helps us reach even more people. Now, here's what we've got for you today. Neil, welcome to the podcast, my friend. How are you?
I'm very good. Thank you for inviting me on today.
Joining me on a Sunday morning of all things. I very much appreciate your time. I know we're all super busy. You were saying just before we came on how your passion and stuff for the emergency services has actually made you busier now since you've retired than when you were in the job.
That's absolutely true. Yeah, I retired in September 2019, and I've never worked so hard since. So it's of my own making, so I can't complain about it, to be honest.
Hey, I'm the same. I always say to people, work twice as hard as you do on yourself as you do on the job, and I do more on my days off. I almost feel like a bit of a dick sometimes when I come back into station or back into the department. They're like, "Oh, steady weekend," and it'll be like this. I'm like, "Well, I had an amazing conversation about EVCU and electric vehicles and different solutions with this guy Neil on the weekend, and then I did this on the Saturday," and they're like, "Dude, take some time." I'm like, "I love it." This is the weird thing about the emergency service.
There's absolutely nothing wrong in having a passion, Pete. You know what I mean? And I think
absolutely.
The more people that have a passion, the better in whatever sector.
Yeah, 100%. Now, for people that won't be familiar, our first sort of initial connection was actually really not, and this is what people don't know about the podcast, is because it's people in the emergency services, we're always trying to give each other a nudge or give each other a pivot. And we had loads of people contact us after episode 215. For people that aren't familiar, the truth about lithium-ion batteries. Professor Paul Christian, I know you know him well yourself, Neil. He's a very interesting guy, very academic, very intelligent guy. And I fumbled my way through that conversation trying to maybe try and give people analogies or examples of how a knuckle-dragging firefighter like me would try and convert some of that into what it really looks like and what it practically looks like. And this was what sort of beautifully came naturally through our connection, is that lo and behold, yourself and a couple of other great colleagues have put together some sort of awareness days and familiarization days for what that practically looks like. So I want to go there first, but before we do that, if you could just give us a whistle-stop tour of your sort of career within the emergency services and then why you're still involved in it now. This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Gore-Tex Professional Fabrics. Now, we all know the working environment of a firefighter is filled with challenges. We face serious risks on the job, such as heat exhaustion, burns, physical and mental stress, and we frequently come into contact with high levels of toxic chemicals. Now, I have been wearing Gore-Tex for nearly 2 decades on the front line, working in hostile environments, tackling challenging incidents from firefighting to water incidents and in urban search and rescue environments. Gore-Tex have a well-earned reputation for protecting professionals in the fire and emergency services through their family of highly innovative, waterproof, breathable moisture barriers that exceeds global performance standards and are trusted worldwide. Gore-Tex, going further together.
Yeah, I joined in 1989. I joined in the West Midlands Fire Service. Did the first 5 years at Central Fire Station, which was an extremely busy station right in the middle of Birmingham. Then I did some sort of temporary promotions, bounced around a bit. And then I left West Midlands in 1999 and moved up to Staffordshire. I went from a station doing 4,000 calls a year to 400 calls a year up in the Peak District in Leek. And a very rural environment. So I never forget the first job I went to as the leading firefighter, as it was then, obviously now crew manager, was a cow in a ditch. And I've just been in a very urban setting for 10 years.
Yeah.
And I just turned around to the crew and I said, I haven't got a clue, guys, what to do with this. You know what I mean? So, and they helped me out. So I went up to Staffordshire, did that for a bit, and I went into the training department. Spent a few years in training, fire behaviour, RTC, as you do in a training department, similar to what.
Why did you want to go in the training department? Because it's been my desire since day one. When you were stood there, 1980s, whatever, and that was that instructor in front of you, and not like they were the font of all knowledge, but those people in the training department, I feel like they need to have a bit more passion about it. And you kind of you've lived in that training sphere ever since, really.
I have, yeah. It's something that which I never thought it wasn't a path I was going to go down. I did one of these assessment and development centres, did really well, and they said, "How do you fancy being a watch manager in training?" And I thought, well, I'll give it a go. And it wasn't sort of something I really wanted to do, but I thought, well, give it a go. It's different. It gets me off the trucks, and and I can learn some new skills. and really flourished from there. I absolutely loved it. And I was crap at school, you know what I mean? About we were learning, you know what I mean? I left school with one CSE in English, and that was only a grade 3 or something like that. It was absolutely shocking. Hated learning. I got into the training department, and it's almost just like it was like a flower blossoming, you know what I mean? It was like I just loved everything about learning, about the different aspects of rescue and all that sort of thing. And I found my passion really, and my real passion turned out to be road traffic collision.
Don't you find that now though when you work with students and stuff and firefighters that come and attend your courses? Because I think so many firefighters struggle in a standard academic environment because we're kinesthetic learners. We like to touch things and see how they work and do things. And that was kind of my thought process coming out of our conversation with Professor Christian as well, because whilst the academic side is great, so many people in the fire and rescue service, we need to know how that translates into the physical aspects. And then when you do get into training departments, you're then able to feed those learners in all the ways that they've probably struggled in the past. Because I was crap at school as well.
Yeah, and as I say, it was just something that really resonated with me in relation to the training department and helping others. I think was the main thing. The main thing for me was that I was helping people to be better than they currently are and raise their
nothing better than a willing audience, is there? When they're stood in front of you, when you get people who want to develop themselves, they want to do their safety commands, or they want to become a workplace trainer, or they're a new recruit, and it's like they want to fucking learn.
Yeah, and also I think taking a little step back, I was involved with the UKRO challenges.
We've still yet to get them on. We've had so many teams that have been successful there, but I want to get the organisers on at some point. I need to.
I can point you in the right direction for a few good people there. So I was involved in the competitions. So on the tools first, and then as a team leader in the competitions. And I never won the world championships, but we always placed relatively well. And then there was a guy who I'll doff my cap to, a guy called Mick McCarthy, who really he was ex-West Mids, and he was an assessor, not for the UKRO, but the organisation before that, which was called QES, which is Car Users Entrapment Society, okay, which was like the predecessor to UKRO. So I actually got in contact with Mick, and I became an assessor for QES. Even before UKRO was born. And I think it was about a year later, it moved over into the UKRO, and I became a UKRO assessor.
For people that don't know what QES or UKRO is, could you just give us a bit of a wide angle of what it actually is and what people do when they go to it?
Yeah, so basically the UKRO competitions, it started off, probably 20 years ago now. I haven't got the exact date in my head, but it was around vehicle extrication challenges and really advancing professional rescue. Yeah. So teams will come along, they would compete against each other. It's probably one of the biggest competitions in the UK now. Still,
it is now, yeah.
And all the teams would learn from each other, to be assessed by the assessors and given valuable feedback. And then the idea is that they go back to their services, and they spread that learning from what they've learned back into their service and raising the standards. And since actually starting with just like vehicle rescue, it's now moved into urban search and rescue, rope rescue, water rescue. And I
think of it like CPD on steroids. It's really,
good. And plus, let's not forget, it's a great social calendar for the fire service as well. Yeah. Because all these guys come together from not just the UK, but from around the world. And they compete and they learn. And there's a few beers had and a few curries had.
And, we should be.
You know what I mean? And it's a great.
At the end of the day, let's not pretend we're not.
Yeah, and it's just great fun to be around. So, if anybody's listening to this podcast and thinks, "Oh, I'd like to get involved with like the UKRO and the competitions and that," 100% do it. Get a team together, come along, and you won't win it the first year. You know what I mean? But you'll learn. Yeah. And I've watched teams, who've started many years ago, and they had loads of learning points, and all of a sudden they went 5-6 years down the line, they're winning the UK championships and they're going to the world championships. Do you know what I mean? So it works. It really does. So I was an assessor for the UKRO for 20 years. Yeah, I know, quite a long time.
You hung around doing that for a bit then. That's what I'm saying. This is why you clearly had such a passion for it.
I only retired from the UKRO in 2019, when I actually retired from the fire service. Okay. And I only really retired because I had my own projects to do and I didn't have time to do everything. Yeah. But a lot of respect to everybody in the UKRO. And then, now go back to my career sort of thing. I've done humanitarian work for Fire Aid. Been over to Poland as part of SESHA, which is the Staffordshire Emergency Services Humanitarian Aid Association, which is a huge name. You know,
why did loads of them have so many of their own things? Because I think it all started with the Florian, didn't it? Ops Florian.
Yeah,
and then there was Sarah, and there's Fire Aid, and there's Sesha, and there's. Why do people keep fucking want to do things in silos?
That's why Fire Aid was set up, because Fire Aid is like the umbrella corporation.
Yeah.
And all of these other organisations sort of sit under that umbrella.
Okay.
But it all comes under Fire Aid. Yeah. But Fire Aid, they funded a trip out to Tajikistan in 2016. I had a phone call to say, how do you fancy going out to Tajikistan? And my first question was, is that even a real country?
Yeah, it's like, we have this in ISAR where we make up names just to call them a little village.
Yeah, where is Tajikistan? And what do you want us to do? We want you to go and train some instructors. So we said, okay. So I put together a little team of instructors, put together some presentations, and we went out to Dushanbe in Tajikistan, where we were faced with 16 sort of recruits, to train them as RTCIs. Bear in mind, I'd had the experience of teaching RTCI because I was at the Fire Service College for 3 years on a secondment, and I was teaching RTCIs and heavy rescue and incident command.
You did a secondment from your service to the college?
I did, yeah. I did a 3-year secondment.
Wow.
2007.
They don't do much of that anymore, do they? I wonder if
they don't do them anymore.
They
associate instructors, but back in the day, you'd go down there for 3 years and you'd live on the college estate and you'd live and breathe it really for 3 years, which is great.
And that's how you make great instructors, really.
Yeah, which is great.
It's like immersion, isn't it?
Yeah, so I was doing everything FBT, a little bit of incident command, teaching BAIs, FBTIs, everything, RTCIs. So I loved it. It was great for 3 years. It was like a big playground,
Yeah, it is.
But it gave me a lot of experience, and teaching internationals as well.
Yeah.
So when I went out to Tajikistan, I was tasked with training these 16 guys. And I'll never forget day one. They're all stood in front of me, like on the parade square, and I've got all the equipment in front of them, and I'm sort of going through an interpreter because none of them can speak English.
Yeah.
And I'm saying, right, does everybody know what this does? Because we donated a load of equipment, hydraulic equipment we've taken over. And not one of them knew anything. We used crowbars and hammers and hacksaws and I thought to myself then, I've got 2 weeks. I cannot put my hand on heart and say I can make these RTCIs in 2 weeks. I've got to get them proficient in the tools first. So we changed tack. So the first year to 2016 was basically give them like an operator's course to teach them how to use all the equipment. And then we went back the year after and actually taught them how to be RTCIs after that a year of hands-on tools and practicing.
That must have been such incredible just to see where they come to as well and the people they're disseminating to.
And then obviously those 16 instructors would then go out across Tajikistan, which is actually, quite a big country when you look at it and very rural. And they would go out and teach at all the stations and the regions within Tajikistan. Now, it was one of my prides really is that, we taught Tajikistan's first ever RTCIs. They had no RTCIs in country.
Yeah.
Until we went out and actually, so I like to think we played a small part in
100%
in actually raising the emergency response arrangements in that country. So, so I did that. Where do we go from there? So I did the college, done some humanitarian work. And then I suppose came up to retirement. Really, I was operational station manager at a rescue station when I finished in 2019, and then I thought to myself, there's got to be more to life than golf.
Yeah. Fuck that, mate. Some people pretend they're excited about retirement. And I'm like, if you're excited, there's two sides to it. Well, there's probably more than two sides to it. But it's like, if you're excited about retirement, it says there's probably already an issue with the way you're living your life. But I think a lot of people, so not everybody, but a lot of people in the emergency services, when they actually come up to retirement, some people, if they've not got a tremendous burning passion that they need that time for, like yourself, perhaps, they're like, don't know if I want to go now because I really enjoy what I'm doing. Whereas you've created a lovely sort of way to still add value to the sector and be part of the sector, even post-retirement, because it's a really tricky time for people.
Yeah, it is. I know a couple of people that have retired, and one guy in particular, I won't know his name, but he retired and he went back into a green book role. and he's just give his notice in because he says, he just can't. It's not
Mate,
the same.
we've just had someone on, Robert Green. I haven't released his episode yet, but he did 30 years and then rejoined as a recruit. He finished at like group manager, I think, and then rejoined as a recruit. And you've got to be like, oh man, how weird is that?
Yeah. The thing is, what a lot of people don't realise is that, they've got 30 years experience to offer. And if you just retire and do nothing with that experience, it's dead in the water. All that experience is lost.
That's why what you're doing, mate, and what so many other people are doing retiring is so important now. And sorry to interrupt you, but because we're doing such a massive turnover, these skills, if we don't create ways for you to continue to add value post-retirement, we're just lost all that experience and we're just going to have to fumble around ourselves. And I say that with the greatest respect to people, but we are at a really pivotal time now where so much experience is leaving fire and rescue service.
You're absolutely right. And it's my mission to basically pass the knowledge from the old guard onto the new guard. You know what I mean? And it's like the instructors, and I'll name them, the two instructors in particular that we use in our courses. Kevin Mitson is formerly from Essex, and Alan Patterson from Tyne and Wear. And they are both retired. They have got so much wealth and knowledge as instructors. You know what I mean? It would be criminal not to pass that knowledge.
Dangerous, because people are going to make the same mistakes that either they've made or they've learned from for operational debriefs and stuff, and people will hurt themselves. And this is something we're going to get onto in our conversation now. If we don't understand what's happened before, I think Winston Churchill quote, I think, isn't it? If you don't remember your mistakes or whatever, you're doomed to repeat them. If you don't learn from them, then we're facing similar incidents with even more complexities than perhaps you were attending when you first joined, but we don't have the experience and that almost safe knowledge and awareness of what's gone before. So that's why, sorry to interrupt, that's why it's so important.
Yeah, and I think that's why myself and my colleagues we set up IRRTC because we wanted to give a conduit to actually give something back.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's not about financials at all. And to be honest, it doesn't make me a millionaire. You know what I mean? By any stretch of the imagination. You know what I mean? I could just have retired and live on my pension, but I'll be bored shitless.
That's it.
Yeah. So, but it just is that conduit to actually feed back in. So we started doing sort of like RTCI training, heavy vehicle rescue training, and they were the two main things really.
Well, heavy vehicle and stuff is really hard for people to get access to those sorts of facilities, isn't it? Because it's a big thing for certain services to try and lay on themselves. So I know, and I've looked through the website, and obviously I've seen some of the content and spoken to people that have attended your courses, and those ones have been really valuable for people, I think.
Yeah, and as I say, there's not a lot of providers providing that around the UK. There used to be a company up north, but they went bust. But Impeller. So people used to go to them. So they went under. So I thought, well, let's give somebody somewhere an opportunity for people to come and have that training. So we started off on doing that, and it was ticking over. And then we started to think, well, what else do people? What other things the fire services need? The training. So we looked at trench training. You know what I mean? So trench rescues.
I think you're the only ones that provide that in the UK, aren't you?
We are, yeah. Well, we're the only company globally who provide an accredited trench rescue course.
I was going to say, because all of yours align to SFJ, don't they?
Everything we do, every course we do.
That's tough for people to do, because actually to align to something like that, rather than just bastardizing your own version of it, it's quite a process to go through, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a really hard process to get SFJ accredited. Trust me. The first time I put an application in, and then the EQA came down. And he talked to me about my application. I felt like I'd done about 10 rounds with Mike Tyson.
Did he rip you a new one, did he?
Oh, God, he really did. He absolutely ripped his pieces.
We're having Candice Miller, I think. If you know who that is.
Who, sorry?
Candice Miller. I think she's
the name, yeah.
Yeah, she's the head of SFJ. She's coming on the podcast soon, and I'm going to try and get an understanding of what SFJ do, with the greatest of respect, because they seem to be beholden to lots of academics and people that have to try and get all these alignment to these legal requirements for teaching and qualifying people. But I still don't have a full understanding of
what they do is they hold your standards to account to a very, very high level.
Okay.
So it's good. I'm going to say when John Percy, who came down from who's the EQA and ripped me a new one, he also at the end of it said, right, okay, I'm here to help you. Yeah, and he helped us get in the right direction. So now we're at a really high standard of training delivery, and we're with the IQA and the EQA pretty much on every course, and it keeps the standards high. So which is I'm thankful for now, but I wasn't at the time. Trust me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would love to talk about trench rescue at some point because it's something from my USAR background I'm really, really passionate about. But echoing back for a second, as we sort of bring it back into the world of vehicle extrication, since you've seen the evolution of electric vehicles start arriving on the market and you saw that sort of monster coming over the horizon, you probably saw and spoke to people in Ukraine or the services and trying to put together their own stuff. When did you start to realize that this was something that did need a greater level of focus? And I know we've spoken about the awareness days that you guys run as well.
I think it's probably about 12 months ago where the penny dropped, to be honest, because obviously I was thinking about the EVCU and looking at submersion units, and I know we're going to come on to that, and developing that. And then out of that, it's sort of the EV awareness sort of idea came where we need to educate crews, because I'd read lots of articles, I'd listened to lots of podcasts about the dangers and the problems of EVs for the fire service and other emergency responders and the recovery agencies. And I thought to myself, well, everybody's talking about the problem, but nobody's doing anything about it.
It's all like we're just pointing at the thing coming over the hill. We're not saying what's going to happen when it gets here, and it's here now. It's amongst us. I mean, I was looking on your website, I think about the EVCU, and it said some scary statistics that have how many are out there now.
There is a tidal wave coming to everybody. You know what I mean? At all the emergency services. So we've got to get a grip of it now. I mean, currently in the UK, and just on the UK figures, there's 800 at the end of 2022. There was 850,000 electric vehicles on the road. Okay, but by 2032, which is only 9 years away, we're going to 23 million. So we're going from 850,000 now to 23 million. Now, America has got about 2.5 million on the road now, across the United States, and they're having huge problems. You know what I mean? All these incidents that we see.
Not just problems as well. People are dying. You know, firefighters are losing their lives. There's not like an awkward problem with trying to resolve these. These are dangerous
that's right.
things.
So there's this massive tidal wave coming, and people, and I say we've done the EV awareness days, and I asked the question on those. Who's got which of the services are here today? I've got policies and procedures and SOPs for dealing with EVs, and you get a tumbleweed going across the front of the classroom.
Yeah,
people know the problem's there, but they've got nothing in place. They've got nothing in place, and that's what I'm trying to say. You need to get something in place, guys.
So what do you go through on the awareness day? Because I say Paul Christian was great, and he kind of outlined some really great academic references and lots of incidents where it's actually happened. But I was trying my best, and I think we achieved it to an extent, but try and drag it down for me if you can, and try and simplify it for what that looks like because yourself from 30 years on the trucks and attending these things, and then UCRO and RTCI courses. What do these crews really need to be aware of when they come into these things?
Right. Okay. Well, unfortunately, not everybody has had the pleasure of listening to Paul Christensen and knowing everything he knows. Yeah. So, I'm going to give a nod out to Paul Christensen, for some, because I've learned a lot from him. I'm going to give a nod to Emma Sutcliffe from EV FireSafe in Australia, because they are really, really at the forefront of lithium batteries and how it affects emergency responders. And also a chap called Martin Lown, he's an ex-group manager from Hereford and Worcester, and now has a company called Firewise. And it's a combination of my knowledge and skills and all of their knowledge and skills, which has put this just a one-day awareness program together. And what it covers is really in 4 main areas. So it starts about the what is a lithium battery and how does it work? Sort of the sort of the chemistry around it in part 1. Part 2 moves into the sort of the hazards and risks to the emergency responders, to Cat 1 and Cat 2 responders, including the recovery industry and that sort of people. Part 3 moves into what we do from operational tactics. So how do we deal with these incidents? And that's not just fires, that's with extrication as well. And then part 4 is looking at all the different types of equipment that is currently out there to assist. So it really falls into 4 parts. and that's the full day, and you get a nice 3-course lunch as well.
Beautiful. Army marches on its stomach and all that. Hey folks, just wanted to jump in with a quick piece around firefighter health and well-being. Whether you are trying to join the fire service and pass them tricky fitness tests, if you are currently serving, or if you are coming up to that next chapter of your life, retiring from the emergency services, we get so many different questions around it. So in partnership with Fitness for the Frontline, we have come up with a series of guidance and programs specifically designed to reflect the physical elements of the role of a firefighter. So whether it's carrying an LPP across an overgrown field, lifting a ladder above your head under running it, or wrestling with cutting gear for 30 plus minutes at some kind of complicated RTC, our bodies are required to lift, push, and carry objects in very specific circumstances. That is effectively what Fitness on the Frontline focuses on, as well as the longer term aspects of overall health and wellness for our firefighters. Now, we are definitely not about to be smashing out world records or getting that beach body ready in 6 weeks rubbish. The systems and programs that we put in place are adjusted for people's current fitness levels, and they're not a prescriptive weight or a one-size-fits-all BS. It is very likely for myself personally that I'm still going to be a firefighter when I'm 60 plus, so longevity in the role is really important to me, and I know it is for so many people out there. It all starts with no obligation, 7 days worth of the programming, absolutely free. So whether you're joining, serving, or looking at the next chapter in your life, Fitness for the Frontline is designed by firefighters for firefighters. Now back to the show. The worst case scenario for me is always the idea that someone's stuck in the vehicle. Do you know what I mean? And then it's getting an awareness of how the battery is behaving, what suppression tactics look like, and ultimately making it safer, like you say, handing it over at the end and the relative risk information for those people that are going to recover, transport, or store these things.
Yeah, well, we do talk about that, and obviously there is an approach that we go in part 3 when we talk about dealing with incidents. You know, we have a set approach which we want to become a standard UK approach, and that's what we're advising. You know what I mean? There's a lot of clever people and a lot of work being done in the approach for dealing with these incidents, but what we want is it to be a UK standard approach. But we do talk about also about people trapped in vehicles in an EV. The fire service turn up, and then it starts to go into thermal runaway. What do you do? It's a very popular question on the EV awareness course. So we talk about that, and it's about looking at things differently. You're always going to have your fire suppressant there. You're always going to have a hose reel there out at the truck, as you would do with any RTC. But you need BA close to hand, very close to hand, or even if you've got enough resources there, have a BA crew rigged up, standing by. Yeah,
like an emergency team, echo or sign of analogy. Yeah, just have them sat there watching the incident progress.
Exactly. So you might have a team doing the extrication.
That's a great shout. That is.
With the BA team stood behind in case it then goes to the runaway. And then you talk about what about the casualty inside the car? They're trapped. Well, first thing you need to think about is, what is your rapid release plan? How can, if it starts going to thermal runaway, can I just snatch them out? You know what I mean? But if they're physically trapped and you can't, then what are you going to do then? You know what I mean? So it's a case, well, one of the biggest hazards to that person is initially going to be all those toxic gases filling in and around the car.
Yeah.
So a lot of services now carry these little Parrott casualty hoods.
Yes, they came out of the Grenfell inquiries. What are they called? Smoke hoods.
Yeah, smoke hoods. So one of them is obviously called Parrott, but there are other makes available. So there's the smoke hood. So part of that of your SOPs now should be thinking, well, how can I give respiratory protection to a casualty who is physically trapped in a car? Yeah. Well, you put a Parrott, you put a smoke hood on them to give them their own. So they can continue to breathe while you're still continuing to get them out. So it's all, these are sort of things that we talk about on the awareness course, of practical solutions for dealing with real problems.
100%. So take us for a second, because I want to go, where's the best place to go next? Should we go into post-fire with those vehicles? Because I also wanted to talk to you about what happens when it's not in a vehicle, because lithium-ion batteries are everywhere. And we spoke before we came on about what is one of my growing concerns, and I know you share that concern, about what's actually going to happen to crews that are attending properties where we've got these banks of batteries or other things like that.
Yeah, and it is a big concern of mine. And I was at a conference, EV conference organised by Greater Manchester last Monday, actually with Paul Christensen, and one of the things that I raised, and there was I think there was Lancashire and Greater Manchester firefighters in the room, about 20, something like that, and I actually sort of raised the point that Paul was giving his presentation, and one of the points I raised there was with all these domestic lithium battery installations now inside houses, and they can be anywhere in a house. Obviously, most of them are normally in the roof space, but they can be, under the stairs.
I think it's going to be loads more of them now, mate. Like I say, with the
Yeah.
cost of electric
So,
and all this sort of stuff happening, people are going to get innovative, and innovative in the public sector can be quite dangerous.
yeah, but when all these installations, if they start to go into thermal runaway inside a property,
Hmm.
then obviously very very quickly, as I'm sure people have seen on the videos, the amount of toxic gases that are produced is going to fill that property
Thousands of litres.
very very quickly. Now put yourself in the shoe of that crew manager turning up on an appliance with his driver and probably two guys in the back with probably less than 4 years in.
Yeah.
Maybe
The call that's coming in is going to be a neighbour will go, there's an alarm gone off next door. Neighbours come round, they've heard the smoke alarm going off, they poke their head inside, they can see the property filling with smoke, the crew's turning up. I mean, take us from there, because that is ultimately going to look to most crews like a standard small fire in a house somewhere filled with smoke.
It is going to look exactly like a normal traditional house fire, which they're going to turn up to. And as we all know from many, many years, what's the standard approach? 2BA, hose reel through the front door.
Yeah, I've had a glance, I've had a look with the tick. It's not hot. I can see some smoke, but it's not hot to touch. So, yeah, we're going to go in.
And yet they're now walking into a property which isn't smoke, it isn't gas. It's basically all the products of this lithium battery, which has filled the house. Now, which has a very, very lower explosive limit, as we know. So you're now going into there, and I related this back to, for any of the old farts listening to this, within the fire service, the Blainer incident where two firefighters were killed. It's a very, very common case study. And they were killed by a vapor gas explosion. Mm-hmm. Okay. And literally what these guys are walking into is a very explosive atmosphere with a very low explosive limit. So that concerns me a lot, to be honest. There's
not many indicators either, though, because I mean, like, some people say, well, look for if the solar panels. Okay, most fires, in my personal experience, it's in the middle of the night, something happens and you turn up, can't see anything anyway. Would you? Yeah, most people maybe would glance up to see if there's panels. We've got panels on our house, 18 panels. They're on the back of the property. You wouldn't see them from the front, and even if you went around the side, you wouldn't be able to get, you have to get right down to the bottom of the garden to see it had any panels. So there's no visual indicator like an electric vehicle. There's no green stamp on the front of the house that says it might contain this.
No, that's right, and that's the scary part, to be honest, Pete, is that there are no visual indicators, and fortunately at the moment I don't think there's not like millions of these properties, but they are growing as people are looking for more economical ways to run their homes. It's only going to increase. The electric revolution is here to stay. Whether it be just cars or whether property,
everything,
buildings,
going to happen everywhere.
Commercial trucks. It's here to stay, and it's going to get bigger. So we need to address the elephant in the room.
What was the group's response to that, sort of, when you posed that question?
I think most of their faces went white, and it's almost like a penny drop moment to think, oh shit, he's right. You know what I mean? We hadn't considered that. And it's like, it's like having an EV car on fire. Yeah. And, it's like having a car on fire, in a town or a city. What does it do? It attracts onlookers. Mm-hmm. People come round to see the car fire, don't they? We've seen it for years. You know what I mean? It draws, a third division gate.
Yeah.
Now add to the fact, though, that an EV in thermal runaway, okay, the gases that are being given off, your hydrogen cyanides, hydrogen fluorides, all the nasty chemicals that are given off on this are now drifting across into that third division gate.
Yeah.
They were stood downwind, and they're all now starting to cough and splutter. So this is another consideration which I think fire services haven't really come to grips with. It's not just the EV on fire, it's the surrounding area and the safety of the public.
Well, it's now a chemical incident, isn't it, to an extent? It has an upper and lower explosive limit. It has that flammability. It's an irrespirable atmosphere. It's lighter or heavier than air. It's you getting into that whole head.
Yeah, and God forbid, those tens of thousands of litres of toxic and flammable gases now drifting over this third division gate just a downwind, and then it ignites. You've now got. Yeah, well, you can picture the scene yourself, can't you?
Yeah, 100%. that is a scary thought process for people to start considering. And I'm not sure. And what frustrates me so much, and I appreciate why, because national operational guidance and all that sort of stuff is a slow moving beast, and it is hard. And lots of people are working very, very hard with the best of intentions in silos, trying to get these changes in place and really scream at the top of their lungs to highlight some of these hazards. But if people don't choose to, or if they're not aware of things like IRRTC or something like that, by the time this information gets into their service and gets turned into some standard operational procedures, it could be a fucking long way. I mean, I feel like we're behind the curve already with EVs, and some of this stuff is going to take so long to get out there.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Because the automotive industry has moved so quickly, and everybody else, not just the fire service, the police, the highways agency, the recovery industry, we're all trying to play catch up. So that's what we're trying to do, our small part. We're trying to educate. And, on the last EV course, I had some people from the automotive industry who work in garages and workshops. And
that's bloody good.
And
because they have got just as much, because like you say, when cars get damaged and they go into these shops to get repaired and they go, fucking hell, fellas, we've got a Tesla here, or we've got an EV, or we've got a hybrid. And they're like, okay, it's had a front end, damage. It's been T-boned. What am I going to do with it?
Yeah, that's exactly what they said. The two guys that came along, they actually, at the end of the day, they came up to me and went, "I never knew all of this." You know what I mean? They've done because in the sort of like the automotive industry, repair shops, they will go and do a technician's course for how to safely disconnect an electric battery and stand on a rubber mat and wear gloves and all this sort of thing. But that's not our reality. And obviously with vehicles that are now going to these repair shops, they're going to park a damaged electric vehicle next to another 40 cars waiting to go into the workshop.
Yeah.
Not even realizing that could go into thermal runaway in the middle of the night and take out not just the workshop, but all the 40 cars as well.
We've seen some of them videos as well, yeah.
Yeah, so it's a real eye-opener for that sector. And the recovery sector, there's lots of cases now in America where, vehicles are being put onto the back of tow trucks, and then the vehicle ignites again and it takes out the tow truck, to the point where there's quite a movement now in America where recovery operators are refusing to take EVs off the roadway because of fear of it reigniting and burning out their livelihood.
Yeah.
So they're stopping.
Not worth it to them. There's been legislation that they're not allowed the EVs in certain high-rises and car parks and stuff like that. There'll be a point where EV scooters aren't allowed on trains. They're not allowed on. So and rightly so, because we're just like, we haven't got the safety solution in place at the minute. So you know what? No, you're not allowed in.
Yeah,
because that's just going to be the case.
I think you're right. I think there's lots of cases now where people are starting to ban. I mean, obviously, I think Westminster Westminster down in London now is one of the latest ones to ban any sort of like EV scooters or EV bikes from their buildings.
Well, you gave an example earlier, didn't you? Around it was an EV scooter, and they tried to immerse it in water.
Yeah, that down in Oxfordshire.
Yes, please.
Yeah, there's a video which which Oxfordshire Fire Service put out, and I asked permission if I could put it onto our social media, and it went viral. It went absolutely. I think we had something like about 500,000 views on it. You know what I mean? Within a short space of time, where they basically put an electric scooter, which was in thermal runaway, into a portable dam, fire service portable dam, and you can actually see it burning under the water. The flames under the water and all the toxic gases coming to the surface and then just drifting off, which is still combustible, you know what I mean? So, or they were just looking for another ignition source.
Yeah.
And it's almost like lightning going off underneath the water, because obviously what the lithium battery does, it electrolyzes the water, creates its own oxygen and hydrogen, and it's obviously got the flame there. So it's feeding itself. So you've got an underwater fire. It's a chemical fire underwater.
Yeah.
So, and that is a big eye opener to a lot of people to think, well, and that's why, the submersion units, which the manufacturers went down the line of, yes, saw one being, I think one that was put in Belgium where they dropped it in a tank of water, skip of water, and everybody went down the line of, oh, we need submersion units.
Yeah.
No, they don't. It doesn't work. And in fact, Tesla and other manufacturers say you shouldn't submerge their batteries.
Yeah, 100%.
Actually, after Hurricane Ian last year in Florida, where there was a load of flooded EVs and car parks in Florida. Once the water levels went down, there was quite a few cases of electric cars then bursting into flames because the water in the battery and the
Yeah.
causing
So
a
when you
surge.
started seeing that happening and you started realizing and reading all of the studies around how immersion wasn't working, and you started to connect those dots from like operational mindset to now business owner working through awareness and better operational skill sets into that end solution. Take us to where you first started looking at EVCU and how suppression or how, sorry, immersion wasn't the answer.
Yeah, well, it was actually about 12 months ago, and I was on holiday in Tenerife, and obviously the wife was out lying on the sunbed toasting, and I can only do it for about an hour. So I'm inside, and I'm on my laptop, and I'm reading stuff, and just sort of keeping myself up to date with things, and and I saw these sort of like submersion units, and then I saw like the recommendations from Tesla, don't submerge, and I'm thinking, this isn't the right solution. It does, to me, it just doesn't feel right.
Best of intentions, and people are just screaming out for a solution.
No.
They're like, "Oh, I just need to say that I've got something." And you can imagine chief fire officers and all this sort of shit, and crews are getting scared and whatever. They're like, "Well, it's one of them. Just buy it." But the science isn't there to support it.
No,
and the manufacturer is saying it's not the right thing.
I mean, you got to remember as well. I taught fire behaviour for 6 years.
Yeah.
I was a fire behaviour instructor for 6 years as well. 3 years in Staffordshire, and I taught it for 3 years down at the Fire Service College as well. So I know how water reacts on fire.
Yeah.
Now, and I also know that putting water onto a lithium battery doesn't put the fire out.
Yeah.
So once it starts burning, you can't put it out. And it's in a metal
coming
box.
out at such pressure as well. When I saw some of them videos and the gas that gets released at such a high velocity.
Yeah, so you're not going now that'll be coming out through a small hole with extremely high pressure. So you're not going to get water through that hole.
No.
And even if you could get the water through the hole, it will still continue to burn anyway. So, because as you said, oxygen showed underneath the water still burning. So I thought to myself, okay, well, if you can't put the fire out, can we actually contain the fire and get it removed quickly, get the vehicle removed quickly? Because fire and tow truck operators have got a risk of removing it. In America, they're saying we're not going to move them anymore. So we need a way of moving it, and we need a way of controlling and containing the fire and the gases. So
I thought about it. Sorry, and this just came to my mind. I thought about it earlier, and if it doesn't make any sense, I'll edit it out. But when people first started transporting hazardous materials and first started transporting like radioactive materials, the transporters were like, "You give me a safe system to transport it, and I'll transport it. Don't just give me a thing and say, move that, and I'm exposing my members of my staff, my team, my vehicles to all this damage and all this exposure to something that's very, very hazardous." Am I fishing in the dark there? But they're asking people to move electric vehicles that are still in thermal runaway, that are still dangerous, that are not contained in a way that's not going to cause harm to the person moving it.
Yeah, and it is a good comparison, so you don't have to edit it out. You'll be pleased to see for that. Okay.
I just say some shit sometimes. It comes to my head. It makes sense.
But yeah, there is a comparison, and obviously because when you turn up to an incident involving an EV, which has been it could have been involved in fire, but even if it's been involved in a severe RTC, the physical abuse onto the battery compartment could have already started that process slowly going into thermal runaway. It doesn't always happen instantly. No. It can take minutes or even hours, or days to actually enter thermal runaway. So as a fire crew, as an incident commander, then you've got a responsibility to that recovery operator to say, you're taking this from me now, but it could catch fire on the back of your tow truck. It could. I'm not saying it will, but it could. We can do thermal scanning and thermal scan around the batteries. But that's not to say that you're going to see it, because obviously you've got it could be a wet day, the metalwork could be wet, so it looks a bit cooler, but inside it's a little bit warmer, but it hasn't got high enough in temperature to really start showing yet. So it's a bit of a gamble, really, going onto the back of that truck. So I know that 2 brigades, I think it's Buckinghamshire and Bedfordshire now. I think what they do, they've put into their standard operating procedures that if a recovery company recovers a vehicle, then they send an appliance to follow that recovery truck.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah,
it doesn't seem very effective, but it's just
it's
get around, isn't it?
It's a control measure.
Yeah.
but I mean, so yeah, there is a duty of care. There's a duty of care. I'm just going to jump to an incident which happened only, I think, within the last 2 weeks.
Please do.
In Shropshire, just outside Telford, and they had an EV on fire. It's always good to relate to an actual incident in the UK rather than something in America.
Yeah.
And they had an EV on fire, and they had 5 appliances and a water carrier on scene for just under 3 hours. Okay, so that's one car fire. Okay, so when you look at the financial cost of that to the fire service, you got 5 crews, and many of them may be retained. You know what I mean? So you're paying them by the hour. So you got 5, and plus don't forget all the cover moves into stations as well for strategic cover, and for 5 hours. So it's a really big hit financially for those services, and it's coming to every service in the UK if they haven't happened already. So that's one of the other reasons with the EVCU that I've designed is that you can turn up with the unit, you open the back door of the unit, you attach the winch to the vehicle, even if it's still smouldering, okay, and you drag it straight into the back of the unit, shut the door, turn the sprinklers on, and drive it away. So that can be done in less than 15 minutes. Wow. So instead of 5 crews and a water carrier crew being there for 5 hours, now what you've got is that the unit turns up and it basically takes it away, and you've been there less than an hour. You know, the crews. The crews will still turn up and put water on it as they've always done, and knock the visible flame back as much as they can. But to actually get that vehicle away is what you want to do, especially if it's in the middle of the motorway, lane 2 of the motorway, and the motorway shut. You know what I mean? Because you don't really want the motorway shut with certainly the police, the highways.
Colossal expense.
Well, £1 million. The figure quoted is £1 million an hour, isn't it? You know what I mean? So, when you look at all the additional hours paid, I've got to pay the truck drivers and additional fuel bills sitting there. The engines.
People think there isn't a cost to things like this. The economical cost is massive.
Oh, yeah, massive economical cost. So if you can have something that turns up and basically takes it away within 15 minutes, and then the motorway's open again, you've just saved millions of pounds to the economy.
So this is a self-contained unit, isn't it? It doesn't require another appliance to follow it or anything like that. I was looking at it before we came on. It's effectively like a fire suppression unit, isn't it? Where it's got all of its sprinklers and suppression aspects to it, but it cycles itself back round, doesn't it? So it can continually,
and that's what's unique about this one. And it's, I mean, and when I designed this, and I designed it with some very clever people. A guy called Arnott Francis, who got about 50 years design engineering background.
How do you find these people?
Yeah, and also a guy called John Beach, who was John Beach Recovery. So he's from the recovery industry, and he's got 40 years experience in the recovery industry. So we sort of sat down around the table and said, what works for you? What should it do? And one of the things that was important to me was that, I know how to fight fire. I've been doing it for over 30 years. Yeah. So I know how to fight fire. So, and the principle of it is that it's a self-contained unit, which contains its own water supply and sprinkler system. So the sprinkler system provides the misting. Now, as we know, when we fight a compartment fire in a house, we use high pressure fog. Yeah, because it has a greater cooling capacity. Yeah, and it's the same principle. So you've got the high pressure mist underneath the car and around the car. So any flame that comes out from the battery compartment.
It's the fire triangle, isn't it? You're removing an environment by which that chemical reaction could take place.
Exactly. So you're taking the heat out of that flame and you're turning it to steam. Now, anybody who's a fire behaviour instructor listening will know at 100 degrees C, 1 litre of water turns into 1,700 litres of steam. When you get to 500 degrees C, it's now 4,200 litres of steam. Then when you get to 1,000 degrees, you're nearly 8,000 litres of steam, okay, from 1 litre of water. Yeah. So that's the principle in which the whole unit works on. It steams the fire to suppress it. So, and because it carries just under 1,800 litres of water.
Well, it's got a 1,200 litre belly tank that sits underneath it. You've got
you've got
grey bars on the side, and you've got
a 500 litre header tank at the front as well.
Header tank at the front.
Just over 1,700 litres. So times that by the expansion ratio,
Yeah.
You've got millions and millions of tons of steam you can
And it's
produce.
got a collecting sump underneath it where it cycles it
It
back through.
has. So any of the
Yeah.
water that doesn't turn to steam
Yeah.
goes back down into the sump. It's filtered and recirculated back into the
It
tank.
looks bloody good.
It
And
is
it's
good.
also got heat and smoke detectors in it, so you can actively
Yeah,
see
yeah. So it's
temperature
got
of the
smoke and
internal.
heat detection inside it as well. So
Not thrown together, is it?
what we advise, the way it's used is, even if you've had a car that's just had a severe RTC, you put it into the unit, by using the winch. So you pull it in, and then even if there's no sign of any thermal runaway, you turn
That's an
on.
inbuilt winch as well, isn't it? Sorry, just to get that for people. There's not a winch that the service needs to. They don't need to provide a vehicle for it. There's actually a 6-ton winch in it.
A 6-ton winch inside, yeah.
There you go.
So it's brought in, and then obviously when you shut the back doors, and it's watertight, so no contaminated water can flow out of it. And then you turn on the under car sprinklers, even if it's not in thermal runaway, just as a precaution, because if it has started thermal runaway, you've got that cooling effect on the battery case underneath the vehicle to hopefully prevent it stop going into thermal runaway in the first place. But then if it did go into thermal runaway, the smoke and heat detectors then turn on the full system. So you've got the whole car is completely enveloped with high pressure mist. So
it's a good model, and I was because actually it says it's got the telemetry system built in for the notification of the activation of any, when it hits those thermal layers or whatever. When it hits
that's something which we haven't put onto the first one that we built, but certainly for people that wanted to use this unit as a storage unit. Maybe if you think there could be a workshop where they've had a damaged car and they want to quarantine that car so it doesn't take out those.
We're going to put it in there
cars
for 3 days, and if it doesn't do anything,
we'll put it in there.
But
the garage shuts at 5 o'clock at night, and then they all go home.
Yeah, and we turn up in the middle of the night because it's on fire.
Exactly. Then we can build in a telemetry into the system so that they get a text message to say your unit's on fire. It's at 3 o'clock in the morning. But the good thing is, if it does catch fire at 3 o'clock in the morning, all the systems will kick in anyway and start fighting the fire, even if there's nobody there. You don't even need the fire service to attend with this unit because, for example, if the police turn up to a severe RTC or the highways agency are there, there's no fire, everybody's out, okay, then they can still mobilise the EVCU to take the vehicle away because it's a completely self-sufficient unit. You don't even need the fire service to attend it.
It's a bloody good system. I'm just thinking to myself, like, as I'm listening to you there, this isn't just fire and rescue service. I'm thinking like highways agencies, recoveries agencies, manufacturers, dealerships. This is a sector resource as well, isn't it? I suppose.
Yeah. I mean, we're also working on another model now, for the waste industry, because obviously about 25% of all fires in waste sites now are caused from lithium batteries being abused, punctured, or crushed, or whatever. So we're thinking
because it's laptops, it's phones, it's battery banks, it's all sorts of variations.
Exactly. So what we can quite easily do is make a unit on the same principle, but with racking in it, so which can be at a waste site.
Yeah, you can put multiple things in there. Yeah,
and then you have like sprinklers over each rack. So all we do then is you put all the lithium batteries that you find, your phones, your laptops, you put it into the unit onto the racking. And then should it then ignite, it's covered by a fire suppression system. So that's another.
So where in your mind do you see this sitting along that journey of incident, fire and rescue service intervention, solution, storage? How do you, in your mind, I know there's a million hurdles and I'm sure you're working your way through them all now. It's like, do you see this as a resource fire and rescue services would hire, would purchase, would have regional assets, because obviously it's great if we say, oh, they're all stored in Scotland and I've got an incident in bloody Newquay. Do you know what I mean? It's not going to be a quick solution.
Yeah, no, it's a good question, and it's one obviously that we've discussed and talked about. I mean, I think it's on around about the 1st of April, the first one that we built, which is the prototype. Because you've got to bear in mind, this is a brand new company. You know what I mean? Absolutely, it's only just been launched. We only had the launch event 2 weeks ago. Wow. And the one that we built is being carried by John Beach Recovery, which is a recovery firm, and I've already been in discussions with West Midlands Fire Service and Staffordshire Fire Service because they have a joint control room and they're close to where we are. And they want to. They're now just putting together a SOPS note for their crews. So they're informing control about the EVCU and when it should be mobilised and why it should be mobilised. So they're just informing, keep getting, letting control know first. And they're also putting together the SOPS note to give to all the crews on station of when the EVCU should be requested. So I would, by around about the 1st of April, we'll actually see it on the road protecting West Mids and Staffordshire. So if West Mids and Staffordshire have any sort of incidents involving EVs, the EVCU can be mobilised to take it away.
Is that a shared ownership model? And feel free to say, not allowed to go into that bit, Pete. It's a bit too much personal information about the services, but like, how will that, because it's an important piece of information. I just feel like we've got to address it. How are they going to pay for that? And what are they going to own it themselves and have to maintain it? Or how does they see it looking?
Well, there's different models, which, and I've said this, so I was asked this on the EV awareness days, how do we get one of these in Surrey?
It's important for people to know that.
In Derbyshire and that sort of thing. And what I can say is that if it was me and I was making a decision, if I was a fire service and I had the problem, if I was the police and I had the problem, or the highways had the problem, or the recovery agency had the problem, I would do a coordinated approach. I would joint share. I'd sort of say to the fire service, well, speak with your local police, speak with your local highways, speak with your local recovery agents, and then come to a solution and say, right, okay, our geographical area is this big, and we need one in the north of the county and one in the south of the county. They've all got the same problem, you know what I mean? So work together. You can't bury your head in the sand, because that's what people are doing at the moment. They haven't got the answer. So
disservice to your crews, because they might deal with it now. They might get a call right now, literally as we're talking. Do you know what I mean? It's not like, oh, this is coming up in 3 months, let's get our heads together. No, it's fucking there now.
Yeah, well, Shropshire, like the example I just gave you, they have one in Telford, five crews, water carrier, nearly 3 hours. You know what I mean? Yeah. And when I spoke to some guys on the awareness course, there was a couple of other brigades, and one of them was there for 6 hours, and the other one was there for 8 hours. An EV incident. You know what I mean? So it's happening now around the country.
It'd have paid for it in one go, then I'd imagine.
Well, that's the way to look at it. You know what I mean? That's the way to look at it. Having an EVCU there saves a lot of money from having crews on scene. So
what's the maintenance with this stuff? Because when I'm looking at it, it does look not glorified. I don't want to diminish it, but it's like,
go on, say a glorified skip.
Yeah, it's a pump, it's water, it's tank, it's detection units. I'm not saying I'm not going to try and make one, that's for sure. But it doesn't seem like it would be that hard to maintain. So I don't imagine there's a tremendous cost associated with that.
No, the maintenance is really easy, to be honest. I mean, there's 6 marine grade pumps. So when you look at the picture of the unit, you see 2 silver boxes on the end.
Yep.
So one of them is all your electrics, which is obviously your dry cupboard, and then obviously the other one is your pumping systems, which is your wet cupboard. Yeah. So in the one you've got 6 marine pumps, which are supplying all the pressure to the sprinklers, and then in the other one you've got a 24-volt battery supply, along with all your manual switches, because everything can run automatically, but it can also be run manually as well. So, the driver or whoever's running the unit can flick a switch and turn the sprinklers on individually, or can turn it on in groups, can turn on and off the detection systems. You can use it completely manually as well. So it's that's what is in there. So, but in relation to maintenance, in relation to your question, it's easy to maintain, and the body, was of the one that people will see on the website. That one's been made for John Beach Recovery, and he wanted it on the back of a flatbed wagon. So that's why it's like that. But it can quite easily be put onto a prime mover body. So it can just be lifted by a prime mover. So if a fire service wanted to carry one, just put it on an A-frame body, and it's exactly the same. It's just transported on a prime mover.
Look, mate, I've absolutely loved that. I think we've covered so many areas, and I've loved the timing of this as well. Like, we've been able to put this in after Paul Christian, and people have now got access to some of these solutions. It's great to see certain services coming on board. My sincere hope with any of this, like with the whole analogy of the podcast, is that people will access this, they'll hear it. It's free for them to be able to listen to. And then what I don't want to do is leave them with no place to go. So from everything they've heard today, what's the best place to reach out to either yourself or the team, and just give us a rundown again of other aspects that people can sort of upskill their crews and their staff with?
Yeah, okay, yeah. Well, obviously, as you know, I wear 2 hats. Obviously, there's the EVCU and there's the IRTC training. So if it's in relating to the EVCU, I would say just go to the website, which is fire-containers.com. And you can see everything about the EVCU there. And
we'll put those links in the whole thing below as well.
Details. And then if you wanted it in relation to training, EV awareness or RTCI or Trench or any of the sort of training courses we do, go to irrtcrescue.com. And that's all our details will be on the website there, and all the courses that we deliver. Please feel free to reach out, and reach out even if you just got a question. It's not all about sort of like trying to sell you stuff, because to be honest, I'm here to help people, and so's the team. The team are here to help.
But also, as someone that runs the podcast, I always say to people, look, people are putting in colossal amounts of work here, so they do need remuneration, and people do deserve that. So I become more and more happy with that, because people should get rewarded for the things that they do, and even after they have spent their time giving everything to the services, then they've still got so much value still to add. And when they're going into these other ventures outside of the emergency services, there's a colossal amount of value that can be added to it. So we'll put all of those notes into the episode links. People will find that underneath. Absolutely love that, brother. Thank you so much for your time on a Sunday. I really appreciate it.
No, I've really enjoyed being here, and keep up the great work you do, Pete. I listen to all your podcasts.
You fucking liar. Don't listen to them all. Some of them are rubbish.
But keep up the good work, buddy.
Thank you, my friend. I'll speak to you soon, all right?
All right. Thanks a lot. Cheers, Pete.
Firefighters Podcast is put together to develop, inspire, and hopefully even motivate those individuals who have chosen to serve our communities and be part of the first responder family. It's brought to you by myself, operational firefighter Pete Wakefield. If you have enjoyed today's episode and you want to see the podcast continue, please head over to our Patreon page, where you can support the ongoing efforts of the podcast. Please hit that follow, subscribe, or rate button on whatever platform you're listening to. Please support your emergency services responders, and thank you for listening.